The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Hello and welcome to the Oracle of Luna with Bridget Engels. Today's guest, I have the honor of chatting with Anique Radiant Heart. Anique is a goddess scholar, a high priestess of the Global Goddess Temple, and a sacred singer. Welcome, Anique.
Hello, Bridget. Thank you so much for having me as your guest today.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you for being here.
My
Yeah. So how are you doing today?
Well, today seems like a wonderful day already. I tend to be a night person. That's when I seem to be able to get the best connection to life, as I seem to be a lunar kind of creature. And so for me to wake up early this morning, it's wonderful because I'm seeing a whole new world. So thank you.
You're welcome. Such a pleasure having you. And you are obviously in Australia, so it's morning there. I just wanted to get started here and ask you a few questions about your role and your interest in the goddess. And I have several questions to ask you, and I'm just going to dive right in.
Good.
Okay. So how did your interest in the goddess come about?
Well, it's a long, long story, but let me begin by saying that I'm 75 years old. And the reason I say that is that it will give context to some of the things I say. Because if you imagined me as being a younger woman, you would not be able to understand how I have lived so many things in such a rich life. But my connection to goddess actually began many, many years ago. It was around my Saturn return time when I was around 28. And at that time, I'd left a very conservative sort of lifestyle to become a radical lesbian feminist activist. And at the time, it was the nuclear threat. I don't know if you recall, there were women who gathered at Greenham Common in England and were protesting the nuclear threat. And so women in Australia were doing similar sorts of things, and I was part of that group. And so we all went to a conference in Melbourne, which is a city in a southern state. I live close to Sydney, which is a bit more north. And at that conference, there was a fantastic workshop that caught my interest because at the time also I was interested in letting go of some addictions that I had. And this workshop was called The Goddess and Addiction. And I had a reaction to that title, the sort of thing that happens when you feel the hair on the back of your neck rise and you know that something's happening. And so I went to that workshop and it just changed my life because everything that the teacher or the presenter was saying resonated so deeply for me that I decided I needed to explore this path a little more. So after the workshop finished, I went up to the teacher and asked her advice as to how I should continue. And she said, well, if you really are interested, you have to read this book. And she held up a book that she had with her, explaining that she always carried that book. And the book was The Great Cosmic Mother of All by Monica Shu and Barbara Moore.
Wonderful.
A great tome of a book. And I looked at this book and I thought, am I really that serious? And something in my heart said, yes, do this. So I immediately went home, got the book, and began to read. And I could not put the book down. I could not. I read constantly, not even sleeping for 4 days, and only managed to get through about half of it anyway. But after getting through about half of it, I knew that I had found my path. And that's the way it all began.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there's that book was very inspirational for a lot of women in the goddess movement, and just her artwork, the visuals
Mm,
are fantastic. And
mm.
yeah, so that's amazing. I mean, and also in Australia at that time, was there a big goddess community? And
No, actually, there was not. And I'll name the leader of that workshop. Her name, she's passed now, bless her glorious soul. Her name was Thea Gaia. And she was really quite unique in Australia because she led women-only groups that focused on not so much rituals and ceremony, but a way of helping us as women to remember our glorious matrilineal goddess-centric path.
hmm,
And in that, I found such richness. So it was an evolution really from reading the book to then experiencing time with this woman who
yeah,
was quite unique at the time. But through her, of course, many of us emerged.
yes. Um, So, as an evolution from that workshop, did you begin to create and organize your own community or circle?
Well, it was a process. So the first thing that I did was I read every book that was in the bibliography of that book. And as you know, that there's a lot.
Yeah.
And well, actually, not all. I have to be clearer than that. I read every book that was written by a woman. Um, so I found out so much about the goddess and the goddess ways, the ancient priestesses, and so on. I did a lot of research about the archaeological evidence and the anthropological evidence. And so I wanted to have a more personal connection to goddess, not just an intellectual one, if you like. So I began to train with Thea. She was training women at the time. And so I began to study with her. And as a result of that, after quite a few years, really, probably around 13 years, um, she said to me, I can't teach you anymore, Anique. It's time that you taught other women. And that began my journey, first of all, of holding workshops,
Hmm.
because I realized from my own experience that women had some kind of yearning and longing within them. They had some sense of having lost something or that something was missing. And of course, I had discovered that for me, that was goddess. That was my connection to the divine feminine self, myself with the capital S self. And so I wanted to be able to assist women to do that, to find who we really are. And so I began those workshops. And then I realized that it's not enough to just help women to get the historical perspective and the cultural perspective. It was important too that we understand how goddess shows up in our bodies.
Hmm.
And I had already known about the chakras for many, many years. In fact, I'd done some quite intensive work with Kay Gardner that you may or may not know. Uh, Bless her glorious soul, she's also passed, around the chakras. And having done that work, I understood that the mystical Eastern way of depicting the chakras through yantras, if you like, to
Hmm.
meditate on, images to meditate on, didn't really take me there. And so what I did is I assigned a goddess to each chakra. So, for example, at the root chakra, I placed Kali, because at the root chakra, is where we hold the understandings and messages that we receive from our overculture, but also our families. And so any change or self-development, if you'd like to call it, that needed to happen within us had to start with our questioning and removing messages that just did not serve us, given our choice to be goddess women.
Yeah.
So Kali at the root, and Hathor at the womb, and Pele at the solar plexus, and Kuan Yin at the heart, Medusa at the throat, Isis at the third eye, and Ancient Mother, the great nameless one, at the crown. And with this and I created original chants for this work, for this chakra chant work, which is available on my CD, Invoking the Goddess. And I began to teach women goddess through the chakras. And this, of course, led me to women who were more into, say, the yoga, or let's say non-specifically goddess focus, but were still interested in that kind of mystical self-development. And that broadened my reach greatly.
Yes.
And I began to meet the most extraordinary women through this work. And so my work developed in training women about the ancient priestess work, teaching women about the chakras so that the work could be grounded deeply into the body. And then I developed a workshop called the 33 Teachings of Kuan Yin, because Kuan Yin is another goddess that I feel very close to. And I started to teach women about how to live a good life through these teachings of Kuan Yin. Again, always using the singing and music as part of the opening up process. So through all that work, I began to gain a little bit of international recognition as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, where were you doing these workshops? Was it in Australia at that time? And what around what year are we talking about?
All right, let me try to work that out. So that would have been, well, let's see, if I'm 75 now, this is must be 40 years ago. I guess when I was around 35 or so, which is, I don't know how long ago, about 40 years ago. I can't remember what the year was.
Okay.
But no, I began in Australia. But what happened was, what really opened up my international profile, if you like, is that my music was sent to Kathy Jones, who, who was organizing the Glastonbury Goddess Conference for years and years and years. And so she invited me to come and sing at the Glastonbury Goddess Conference.
Wonderful.
Because back then, as you know, Bridget, I don't think, there may have been one or two other women in the whole world that were actually singing songs that said goddess. Lots of people doing music that kind of skirted around the edges, but nowhere else had I found any CDs or cassettes, whatever they were at the time, that actually said goddess. I think Lisa Teal was the only one. So Kathy invited me over, and then that just opened up the world, because as it happened, I was also able to offer a workshop at the conference, and women from all over the world were there. And so after that conference, I received invitations to go everywhere, all over Europe, US, Canada. That's right then. And so I started my travels.
Oh, fascinating. So Kathy Jones, she has been organizing this Glastonbury Goddess Conference for many years. Are you going to be going back there soon, do you think, at some point?
I don't think so, to be honest with you, because the conference has shifted in focus and energy, in my understanding anyway. In that, when I started going to the Glastonbury Goddess Conference, it was a women-only event. Now it's a mixed event, and with the politics of today, it's not an environment that I find particularly safe for me.
Right. Okay.
So I tend to attract invitations that are for women-only kinds of events. And I must say that this is changing a little, because I am organizing a huge event in Crete later on this year. Which is open to all. And this is very new for me, because here in Australia, I organize women-only events, and I have been organizing the Goddess Conference in Australia for many, many years. And that is,
I was going to ask you, so from your chanting through the chakras and your workshop, and then Glastonbury, when did you begin the Temple of the Global Goddess? Because that's in Australia.
That's right. That's right. Well, the temple began in a very humble way, as in a spare room in my house. Now this must have been mid-90s.
Okay.
And I decorated a room with 4 altars and a main altar. And it was very beautiful. I'd collected over the years many, many, many goddess icons and banners and all sorts of things. And so it was a beautiful room to walk into. And the reason that I focus on this for just a moment is that I truly believe that she is an expression of beauty. She brings beauty with her. And that's to the environment in the form of nature and the beauty that we hold within when we're in that sacred space. And so for me, a very important part of honoring her is creating a beautiful space that radiates invitation, holding, and sacredness. And so I started with that one room. And before I even opened it to the public, so to speak, I began chanting in there every morning. I do morning practice. I've done this now for over 40 years, and sometimes evening practice as well. And so I started to chant in that room until I felt that when you walked into it, you felt that same sense of wonder that you do when you walk into the wondrous cathedrals that are all over Europe. And the Sekhmet temple, even in Nevada. I wanted to create that sort of space before I invited any of my sisters in. And so when I felt that was right, I organized my first group. I just called to women to come for a regular group. It was once a month to begin with. It was a circle where we sat and we basically just filled each other in on what had been happening in our week or our month. We pulled some tarot cards and read for each other. Then I led a short meditation and asked everybody around the circle to offer a prayer of gratitude. And that was how we began. That's how I began to hold what I call my regular temple services. I started out once a month around full moon, but it was not a full moon circle. It was a sister circle, I called it. And then they became more frequent, and then they became once a week. So the temple the room, the temple was absolutely chock-a-block full. And so I had a conversation with Mother, which is what I call my prayers, and said, well, if you want me to continue with this work, then unfold whatever needs to happen. Well, of course, now I know whenever I ask her, I better be prepared because what happened is that I actually had to move from that location. I wasn't planning on moving. I wasn't even ready to move, but I moved from that location, and that's a whole other wondrous story, and moved to land in the northern part of New South Wales and built a big shed, just a big tin shed, and that became my temple. And I thought to myself at the time, goodness, Mother, you've put me here in the middle of nowhere. Are there any women here? Are there any women here who are going to come? Well, of course, I should have trusted, because within, maybe 3 or 4 months, the temple was in a place called Willawarren, a little village outside of Kempsey, for those who are in Australia. Women started to come, and before long, that temple was buzzing as well. So that's pretty much the story of the temple. And now I live in a place called Maitland, which is Wanneroo land, Aboriginal country. And I have a beautiful temple, which is a separate building at the back of my home, which has its separate entrance and so on. And that's where I do the priestess training and also the workshops that I hold.
Okay. And about how many women do come through there each week, or?
Well, it's not that big, and I limit numbers now. I have 10, but for the teachings, I have 10 women. When we invite the community in, say, for example, when the priestesses graduate, we invite the community in, their friends, their families, and so on. We can hold up to 30 in a theatre-style seating. And in circle, probably around about 20 is comfortable.
Wow, that's pretty big.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So do you begin with chanting, or I'm sure there's music and sacred singing involved in your rituals?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I begin everything with chanting. The
Wow.
reason I do that is that I've learned over the years, many years ago, that there's always someone in the group that is yearning so deeply, so deeply for something to be offered, that there's a little element of resistance as well, which is the fear that there won't be. And so I have found that when I chant, I ask them not to chant with me, even if they know the chant, just to sit and receive. I find that when I do that, any resistance in the room just dissolves away, because I have been given a gift, and I wish I knew the name of it. But some years ago, I was invited to sing for a visiting guru in Sydney. And at the end of my singing, she said to me through one of her assistants that I had something, XYZ, whatever the word is in Sanskrit, that a quality that made the heart open, whether one wanted or not. And I seem to have that, Bridget, because
Yeah.
whenever I sing, and if you like, at the end of this, I can just do a little bit of singing for you.
Sure.
There's something about when I sing that is healing and opens the heart and pushes away the ego. I think this is the
Yes.
salient point here. And
Yes.
so, you know, that's why I always open with singing. And then I do a very, very short prayer. And then I put on a chant that everyone can, a call and response chant, so that everybody can chant with me. So that if
Yeah.
there's any residue at all of resistance left, it's certainly gone by there.
Yeah. Well, clearing the energy is super important, and enveloping uh participation in women, super important for group functionality. That's it's a beautiful way to involve women and get them in sacred space and
Yes,
allow for like you say, an opening.
yes, yes.
That's
That's
beautiful.
yes.
Well, I have heard on your one of your YouTube opening singing videos, and it's beautiful. You have a
Oh, thank
wonderful
you.
voice, very
Thank you.
powerful.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So I was reading about a little bit about the mother world, and a little bit of in your bio, you had the concept of the mother world as a platform for social, political, and spiritual change in the world.
Mm.
Is that something that you can speak a little bit more about, or any?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
This is a how would you describe it? Well, I guess this is a movement, isn't it? It's a movement in a way that was envisioned and co-created by Kathy Jones and her community. And essentially what it's about putting the values of mothering, mother, at the center of life. And for me, mother and mothering, you may as well say creation.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about here just babies. I'm talking about ideas,
Mm-hmm.
projects,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Creation, and not just creation, joyful creation, because that is what is missing in this world today. With the let's say with the fatherhood mentality that we live with today, that is all about control. That is what the father is about. It's about control, and it's also, in its good sense, protection. However, we live in a world where control and protection have become control and domination. And so the mother world looks at completely reversing that, putting motherhood, mothering, creation at the center of life, and everything that supports that. And the sorts of things that support that are, first of all, inclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
generosity,
Mm-hmm.
compassion, uniqueness as well, celebrating that, and so many others of the values that we want and need in our lives, like honesty, authenticity, support of each other, non-judgment, and I could go on and on and on. So really, the mother world is not a very difficult or lofty concept at all. It's about understanding that if everyone is not truly equal, then there cannot be a beautiful world. And we live in a world where there is so much imbalance in that sense. Animals are not equal, plants are not equal. Life is skewed to the very tiny 2% of humanity in this world, and that is the men with money.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mother world looks at reversing all that and, in a sense, taking us back to a world which is much more simple in many ways, and which is less focused on doing and just being and enjoying each moment of life as it could be, and in a sense, although I rarely use this word, should be, for all of our sakes. That's really all the mother world is about.
Well, that is a beautiful and powerful concept for change and development. And I'm wondering how would you carry that out and into the world? Just for us people who, go to work, get up, go to work,
Yes,
and,
yes.
live their lives. And, how can this concept of the mother world be enacted in, 2022 for
Yes, I understand your
general
question.
population?
Look, it's a huge question. Of course it is. So I will begin on individuals. How can individuals begin to bring about the mother world? And this is something that all teachers, mystical teachers, spiritual teachers talk about. It begins with the self. And it begins in a very simple way: taming the ego, not removing the ego, taming the ego. And for me, the best way of taming the ego is to live in gratitude, to be grateful for everything that unfolds in our world, whatever it may be, good, bad, or indifferent. And the way that I keep myself grounded in gratitude is to each morning do a very simple practice. Simply create a tiny little altar. And when you had your video on and could see me, you may have noticed that even at my desk, I have a little altar. And each morning, after I finish my sacred practice in the temple, I come up to my desk where I work every day, and I light my candle and I offer my prayer of gratitude within my workspace, because for me that's important, that it is the workspace for me that summons my ego the most powerfully. So each morning I light a candle, I light a stick of incense, and I make the offering with the incense, and I say, "Beloved Mother, gracious one, she who is all, help me to keep my ego at bay today. I am so grateful for my life. Blessed be." Now, you may think, how on earth can this change anything? It is such a powerful thing to do, Bridget, because who are we speaking to when we speak to Goddess? We are speaking to our higher self. We are speaking to ourselves.
Yeah.
We are offering ourselves gratitude for being here. There is nothing the ego delights in more than being thanked and being the center of attention. So in a way, we're feeding our ego in a healthy way, and we're reminding ourselves that it is indeed wondrous, this life, that we need to be grateful for our lives. It all starts there.
That's powerful. I'm sure my listeners are um I have like the hair on the back of my neck is kind of raising when you talked about that, because that's something I try and do. I have my little altar here in my workspace, and little statue of current statue of Hecate, and my candles. And I do something similar, but being grateful is very powerful, regardless of what's happening in the world. You were right. That is a powerful way to start your day, and also to connect to the whole.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah. So, other than your, let's see, your temple events, and then your singing, your sacred singing, And it sounds like you're going to be leading a tour soon. Can you
Mm-hmm.
discuss this?
Yes. Oh, well, this is a wondrous part of my world, and for this I am so deeply grateful. But this started, actually, I remember the date of this because it's so clear in my memory. This started back in 2004 when Carol Christ was brought to Australia by one of my colleagues in Brisbane. And of course, I registered for the workshop and went up there. And I'm so grateful when sisters from overseas come to Australia because we are so far from everything. And for us to travel and be in the presence of great minds and great hearts, it's not easy for everybody. And so for all of my sisters around the world who have a unique message that they share that help us, come to Australia, please. And if you'd like to contact me, I will help facilitate that. So Carol Christ came to Australia and I went up and she was just extraordinary. And the organizer of the workshop, bless her soul, honored me by asking me to sing to close when Carol had finished, just as a closing. And so I sang She Changes, which is what I always sing a cappella when I'm asked to sing. And this is my own composition of She Changes Everything She Touches, which is quite different to the one that most people know. And so Carol, I remember, closed her eyes as she was listening. And when everything had finished and when she'd finished talking, there were so many who wanted to talk with her, of course. And I was just chatting with my friend, and Carol came over and started to talk with me, asked me a little bit about myself and so on, and then said, you know what? I lead a tour to Crete every year, and I'm a terrible singer. I can't sing in tune. If you come to be my sacred singer, I will, make it much more affordable for you, and you can sing for me at the sites and so on. Of course, I jumped at the chance.
Yeah.
I'd never been to Crete, although I'd read so much about it and so on. And that's how it all started. I went to Crete, and this is really amazing, Bridget. And when I stepped, I remember I had gone through menopause 2 years before. I'd well and truly stopped bleeding. When I set foot on the soil, not at the airport, as soon as I arrived at the hotel, which was very close to a beach, and I walked a little bit further where I was actually on the land, I started to bleed. It was if she reached up through my yoni and grabbed my womb and squeezed it, and I bled. And it was extraordinary. And I didn't think too much about it at the time because I was so excited. Well, fast forward to today. I'm just sidestepping for a moment. I'll get back to the tours in a minute.
Okay.
I recently sent my DNA to whatever it is .com, where they test whatever your DNA is. Lo and behold, it came back. I mean, I was born in Egypt, so I knew I had Middle Eastern. Yeah, I knew I had Middle Eastern DNA, but the DNA assessment came back and I had a high percentage from Crete, Greece, Anatolia, and that whole area.
Wow.
And so, of course, I had come home in some sense. And so now back to the tours. When I, after the tour with Carol, I knew I had to bring women to Crete because everything I was teaching them about the temples, about the ways of goddess, about the priestesses, all of that is imminent there. It's still alive there. And it was the only museum in the world, and I'd seen many by that time, that actually had iconography of the goddess, and underneath in the little sign that's explained about it, it said goddess this, goddess that, priestess this. It was actually there. It was written in black and white. It was real. And so I knew that I had to bring women to Crete so that they could experience that. And so I've been doing that for many, many years. And also, a few years ago, I was told by my Aboriginal sister, Auntie Billawara Lee, that I had to go back to my land of birth because I was getting older now. And I had to go to my land of birth and get some soil, bring it back and put it in my garden so that my ancestors would be able to find me when I passed. And when she said that, that resonated so deeply in my heart, because I had not wanted really to go back to Egypt. I had I guess, a rather traumatic leaving of Egypt. We had to leave as refugees, my family and I, when there was the Suez crisis in 1956. And I was 9 years old at the time, so it was quite traumatic for me. So I had no real desire to go back. But when she told me that, I knew I had to go back. Well, that was an epiphany. That whole journey was an epiphany. That's a whole other podcast as well. And I decided then that I also had to bring women to Egypt, because the mysteries there are so extraordinary. And even though there are many overlays, many of the temples that we see now are built over many, many layers of temples. Just as in Kut al Hayuk in Turkey, there are many, many layers, and, to get to the ancient, I think there were 14 layers at Kut al Hayuk. So even though in Egypt there are many overlays of the temples, it is still incredibly resonant there. And there are certain spots, particularly some of the older pyramids, where you can really, really feel. And if you are the kind of being that receives visions, I received the most extraordinary visions there of just being able to, as if I'm watching a video of life there, of how the priestesses were in the temples and so on. So it's an absolutely magical tour, and we head off again on the 15th of May. We head off again for this year's tour of Egypt, and then there's a tour to Crete, which will be the 19th to the 26th of October, just before the convocation.
Okay. Wow. It's so good to hear that you're traveling again. With COVID, everything was shut down, but the world is opening back up again. So it's amazing.
Thank the goddess. Thank the goddess for
Thank
that.
the goddess. Yeah. So what is the Priestess Convocation?
This is a dream that I've had for many, many years. In 2013, I invited Max Dashu to come and tour the East Coast of Australia with me. And while she was teaching one day, I had a vision. I was taken back to Göbekli Tepe, which is an ancient place in Turkey. And I saw, I had a vision of this vast chamber and all these women coming together. And it was obvious that they were priestesses. And they had the crescent moon markings on their brows. Many of them were dressed in their ceremonial robes, and you could see that different groups of priestesses were dressed in similar garb, which told me that they had come from different lands or different places. And I had this incredible sense that this was a huge coming together of priestesses from everywhere. And of course, if we remember that way back then, there was no telephone, there was no internet, etc. And so in order to network with each other, priestesses from everywhere would gather together, meet together, discuss whatever they needed to discuss, exchange projects and everything that we do when we gather as women and as priestesses. And in that moment, I had a chill. I had this incredible feeling, up and down my spine, that I had to gather the priestesses, that she was calling to me through this vision to gather the priestesses. And if you want to read the vision in full, I've only given you a tiny idea of it. You can go to priestessconvocation.com and you can read the vision there. It's in English, German, French, Spanish, and I think one other, maybe Italian. I can't remember. So you can read the whole vision.
Okay,
so,
I will.
Yeah. So I waited a while, because when we have grand visions like this, or at least I did, when I had this grand vision, I also had fear about putting it out there, because unfortunately, in every community, not just the goddess community, but in every community, there's always someone that will judge you. There's always someone that will want to cut you down. And this vision was so precious to my heart that I wasn't ready to really talk about it until I went to the Glastonbury Goddess Conference that year. And I decided I was going to reveal my vision and see what the response was. Well, I read the vision out. This was instead of offering, Kathy, for many, many, many years at that point, had invited me to be a guest of the conference and to deliver a half-hour, I suppose, just a talk, and also to give a workshop and to give a concert. And so I took that opportunity of my talk time to read out the vision. Well, it was amazing. All the priestesses in the room stood up because at the end, after I finished reading the vision, I said, "Will you come with me?" And all these women stood up, and I knew, thank you, Goddess. And so we started to organize a convocation. And when I say we, is that I invited women from all over the world to be what I'm calling conch priestesses. In other words, the priestesses that hold up the conch and put out the call to come. And we started to bring the convocation together. Well, this was going to be in 2021. No, it was going to be originally 2020. Well, of course, what happened? COVID. So it had to be postponed to 2021. Of course, we still could not travel because of COVID. So now finally it's happening this October, the 21st to the 27th of October in Crete, because this is where I feel my vision needs to be unfolded in a land where my ancestors are there to support us. And hopefully women will still come. When we first launched the convocation, we had over 140 women who bought tickets, sight unseen. We didn't even have a program, but just the concept of priestesses coming from all over the world and gathering for 7 days. And that's important because I don't know about you, but when I go to a goddess conference, it takes me a day to detox from the world and from traveling. And then you have one day perhaps, and then the next day it's time to leave again. And it's never been enough for me. And so I wanted it to be 7 days so that at least we had a day perhaps to detox, and then 5 good days, and then the last day preparing to leave. So unfortunately, because of all the postponements and so on, we now have around 70 women and men, because it's open to all, who still have their tickets with us. And I'm hoping, great. Yes, and so the convocation is going ahead no matter what, but I'm hoping that more will come when we feel a little more safe. I mean, God is protect us. The war in the Ukraine has not helped as well. And COVID is still making a lot of people uneasy. But I'm praying that by the time October comes, maybe September comes, lots and lots of women and men will decide to come and enjoy 7 days of glorious goddess, priestess, priest celebration.
I hope so. I would like to go.
I hope you come.
Is it too late or?
Oh, absolutely not. We're starting all over again now because many of the women who decided not to come for one reason or another were involved in the ceremonies and so on. So at the moment, we're putting out a call. We have a Facebook page. If you just search Priestess Convocation Crete on Facebook, you will find the group. And join the group, and information is going out all the time. And right now is when we're calling for priestesses and priests, groups particularly, to put forward an offering based upon the ceremonies that are described there. So when you go to our webpage, which is priestessconvocation.com, when you go to our webpage and click on the program, you will see all the ceremonies that are being offered. And the ceremonies represent a journey back to the temples, raising our sacred temple, doing healing work about when the temples were raided and destroyed by the patriarchy, then going through a journey of reclaiming and healing, and then finally celebration at the end. It's a beautiful, extraordinary journey. And so we want priestesses and priests to put forward offerings that will fit within those parameters, if you like. So I really do encourage everyone to go and have a look, because I doubt that this event will ever happen again. It's such a huge event. Of course, I pray that somebody will pick it up. I feel now at my age that it's coming to a time where I will probably want to be winding down organizing these kinds of huge events and focus on my tours. So please, everyone, go and have a look and see where you can fit into that beautiful vision.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned that you would love to do a little chant. I'm open to that if you feel up to it.
Absolutely. Well, this chant, as I said earlier, is called "She Changes Everything She Touches." And many of us know the chant that has been sung for years and years in the goddess community, which is "She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes." Now, I liked that chant, but it didn't take me where I wanted to go. So I asked Mother if I could rewrite that chant. And this is what she gifted me.
Okay.
She changes everything she touches, everything she touches changes. She changes all that she touches, and everything changes. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be.
That was amazing and exquisite. Thank you so much, Anique. What a
Thank you.
powerful chant. Yeah, I felt it like a serpent going up and down my chakras as I was
Wow.
listening to that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Very powerful. Well, I have really enjoyed listening and speaking with you today, and I wish you the best on your International Priestess Convocation in Crete and
Thank
all
you.
your future endeavors. It's just been amazing speaking with you, Anique.
Oh, my pleasure, Bridget, and I'm glad to have met you, my sister.
Yes. So with that, I am going to close and merry meet and merry part and merry meet again.
Yes, I pray that we do meet, Bridget. Blessed be and have a wonderful, wonderful life.
Thank you. You as well. All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.